Xi Jinping has been called many things: Red Emperor, authoritarian, communist dictator, Winnie the Pooh. The list goes on, but none of those names befit a statesman. So what does Xi do? He tries to rebrand himself as the wise and benevolent peacemaker, the elder statesman, fighting for world peace. It's been a gradual process. Until last year, we were talking about China's wolf warrior diplomacy. Now you have peace plans coming out every month. February, there was a peace proposal for Ukraine, ambitious and hence rejected. In March, there was a peace deal for Saudi Arabia and Iran, and this time she had luck. Many called it China's arrival in West Asia. So naturally, it's time for the April peace plan. But this time, Xi Jinping is eyeing the improbable. He wants to broker peace between Israel and Palestine. Quick background here. On Monday, Xi's foreign minister dialed his counterparts in Israel and Palestine. His message to both leaders was largely the same. The recent violence is concerning, restraint is the need of the hour, and both sides must work towards a two-state solution. The Chinese statement actually makes for interesting reading. Beijing says it has, quote-unquote, no selfish interest in the region, which is true if you exclude the $19 billion China has invested in Israel. There is no selfish interest. But we'll get to that later. First, let me tell you how the Israeli foreign minister responded. He said Israel is committed to cooling the situation. He also said that a resolution will take time and will not be reached in a short term. So a lukewarm response at best. Now, what exactly explains China's sudden confidence, though? After all, this is not a new conflict. For decades, the US has tried to strike peace between Israel and Palestine. If the Americans failed and the United Nations failed, can she succeed? Most of China's influence in West Asia is linked to one thing, and that is money. Like I said, China has pumped in $19 billion into Israeli companies. They also operate 3 out of Israel's 4 major ports. Bilateral trade, nearly $22 billion. In fact, China is one of the biggest sources of Israeli imports. That sort of money does give leverage. Plus, China comes with some important goodwill. They have excellent ties with Israel's biggest rivals, Saudi Arabia and Iran. But having said all of this, money is not the biggest factor for Israel. Security is. This is a country whose existence is denied by most neighbors. It needs robust military assistance for security. Enter the United States. Israel is the largest recipient of US military aid, some $150 billion every year, $150 billion per year. You may have heard about Israel's magical Iron Dome defense system. Well, that is actually replenished by the US. So there will be pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reject Chinese mediation. And it won't be a first. We've seen examples of this in the past. In 2020, Israel rejected a Chinese bid to build a desalination plant. Why? Because pressure from Washington. Same year, they cancelled a radar deal with China. Last year, in 2022, China lost a light rail project in Tel Aviv. So the bottom line is this: China's relations with Israel have certainly grown over the years, whether it's trade, investments, or tech transfers. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself presided over this growing relationship. In fact, they're now negotiating a free trade agreement. But there is one thing Xi Jinping cannot guarantee, and that is an endless war chest. As for Palestine, their options are limited. The world is dangerously close to forgetting their movement, so the attention from China will certainly be welcome. But will it be fruitful? At the moment, it looks highly unlikely. With Iran and Saudi Arabia, the chips aligned perfectly for Beijing, plus the resolution was between equals. But that's not the case in Ukraine, and that's not the case in Israel. Both Russia and Israel are powerful countries with powerful armies. So getting them to concede is not easy. As for the United States, it's time to introspect for them. Their foothold in West Asia is now firmly linked to defense only. There is little goodwill, little financial dependence, and of course, the oil factor is gone. This military dynamic applies to all US allies in West Asia, including Saudi Arabia. More than 60% of their weapons come from America, less than 1% from China. Unless Beijing can bridge that gap, such peace plans will have few takers.